Welcome back to another Diablo 4 video. Today we're going to be discussing the Tornado Druid. This build all around is really solid. You have great single target, good AoE clear, you can basically face tank everything in the game, and on top of that, just a ton of attack speed. I would say the only real downside to it is the Tornado ability itself at times. It can be a little bit problematic in its pathing, especially if you don't have the Tornado legendary power to go along with it. Let's take a closer look at Tornado. Conjure a swirling tornado that deals damage. So the really powerful thing about Tornado is that it can deal damage multiple times to the same enemy. And then the modifiers, the first one, you have a 20% chance to spawn an additional tornado, and then enemies hit with Tornado have a 10% chance to become vulnerable for 3 seconds. When you cast Tornado, it starts at your character. It is not cast on your mouse cursor. So for the purpose of this video, we're going for more of a melee-focused build. We're going to be in melee range the majority of the time. You could definitely play this as more of a ranged caster if you wanted to. The Tornado legendary power allows it to seek targets. This is what's really going to help us fix that pathing issue that we were talking about earlier. It definitely helps a lot. It's not completely gone. But like I said, we are going to be playing this in melee range for the most part, so typically you're going to be dropping tornadoes right on top of enemies. Next up, let's take a look at the skill tree. So for our generator, we have Storm Strike. This is going to generate 15 spirit, and then baseline, it's going to reduce damage taken by 25% for 3 seconds after dealing damage with Storm Strike. For modifiers, the first one is going to give us a chance to immobilize enemies, and then the second modifier will give you a 50% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. This is going to be our main source of applying vulnerable. Then we have Tornado. We're going to put all points into Tornado that we can. Then we've already talked about the 2 modifiers. Now you could drop Raging Tornado and just rely on Storm Strike to apply vulnerable. We got 1 point in Heart of the Wild, mainly so we can get 2 wild impulses. So this is going to increase the cost of Tornado and make it deal more damage. So we're getting tons of attack speed from legendary effects, which means Storm Strike will be generating spirit very quickly, which is going to help a lot with this increase to the cost. Now, one thing you could do if you're going to drop Raging Tornado, you could put 1 point into Abundance, which is going to make Storm Strike generate even more spirit. So then coming down to the defensive cluster, we're going to grab Earthen Bulwark. This gives you a barrier for 3 seconds that absorbs 45% of your base life. And then for modifiers, the first one's going to make you unstoppable while it's active. So the way Unstoppable works is it removes and prevents control impairing effects. So that means, let's say you get frozen. You can actually hit this ability while you're frozen and it will break you out of it. And the second modifier is going to give us Fortify when we cast this. We're going to also be running Blood Howl. This ability heals you for 20% of your maximum life. The thing that makes it really crazy is the first modifier. Kills reduce the cooldown by 1 second. So if you're moving really quickly through a dungeon, this is going to be off cooldown constantly. For the second modifier, you can go either direction here. So you can go for the 15% attack speed for 4 seconds or the 20 spirit generated. We're not going to take anything in the companion cluster here. And the only thing we're taking down here is Trample. Just 1 point into Trample. This is really the only movement ability that you can get on the tree for the Druid. And then baseline, it also makes you unstoppable. So we actually have 2 abilities that can break us out of hard crowd control. So for you Diablo 2 fans out there, you may want to run Hurricane, which I totally get. In my experience, at least with the amount of skill points that we currently have, it just feels very weak to me. And to make it do enough damage to really matter, you'd have to pump a bunch of points into it. If you want to run it, I would really only run it to either get the damage reduction or, again, to apply vulnerable more often. The one upside to it is it's something that you click, it stays on for 8 seconds, continues to deal damage while you're casting other things like Tornado and Storm Strike. We're also not going to go into any of these passives here. Again, these may be something that you look at after level 25 when the game actually launches, but for now, we're so starved on points that I'm not going to go into these passives. So we come all the way down here. So I'm taking Cataclysm. It's an 80-second cooldown. It's a very fun ability to press. That's partially why I'm running it. It's also pretty good on bosses, but you absolutely don't have to run it. If you wanted to run Petrify instead. Petrify is pretty good too. Or you could just not run a ultimate whatsoever. You could just put that extra point into Defiance. We only have 1 point in here right now. This increases your damage against elites. Or you could put a point into Circle of Life for more healing. You could also potentially run Cyclone Armor. At one point I was running this, so I was actually running 3 defensives. But I found that I didn't need it. I had plenty of toughness, plenty of survivability without running Cyclone Armor. But there are plenty of things here that you can mix and match and play around with and see what you like. Alright, let's take a quick look at the gear. So you can go with a 2-hander or a 1-hander and totem. Now, something to keep in mind, in the beta currently, totems are bugged and you can't put legendary powers on them. So overall, it's probably better to go with a 2-hander if you have enough attack speed. If the build doesn't feel good enough and you're not getting enough spirit back with Storm Strike with a 2-hander, then run the 1-hander and offhand. Quick rundown of the legendary effects that I'm currently running. So of course, the Tornado ability, like we already talked about. The basic skills gain increased attack speed. This ring is giving me critical strikes with core skills, Tornado. Increase your attack speed by 22% for 3 seconds. Skills deal up to a percentage increased damage based on your available primary resource when cast. While Unstoppable, which again is Earthen Bulwark and Trample, and for 2 seconds after, you gain 10% increased movement speed and can move freely through enemies. This is an amazing quality of life legendary. This gives you a barrier when you encounter an elite, can only happen once every 30 seconds. Attacking enemies with basic skills increase the damage of your next core skill by 9%, stacking up to 50%. Basic skills grant 25% damage reduction for 7.5 seconds. This is up basically all the time. And then on the helmet, when you use a shape-shifting skill that changes your form, gain 29 life. Then if you're at full life, you gain Fortify instead. And we have 2 different abilities that will change our form to proc this. So yeah, that's just what I'm currently running. Again, none of that's really mandatory except for the Tornado Legendary. And so mix and match things, try out some different stuff, and see what works for you. Anyways, guys, I think that's going to about wrap it up. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.